I'm Dr. Jordin Wiggins, and this is the Pleasure Principles podcast. Join me on this journey where sex, science, and sensuality meet. Let's change the conversation around sex and pleasure together. Hello, Superwomen. I am here with a very special guest. I've been literally so excited to record and share this episode with you. Giana Darling. She is one of my favorite erotic fiction writers, which, I mean, you can correct me. Is that the right genre? What would we call it?
Yeah, I just say romance, but erotic romance works.
Okay.
So yeah, erotic fiction. We're easy breezy here.
Myself and my clients are literally all about your work, specifically the Fallen Man series. So welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into writing romance, erotic fiction, whatever we want to call it.
Okay, well, hi guys, I'm Giana, and I'm a Canadian romance author. I started writing when I was 8 years old, and I always wanted to be a writer. And then I was all set to go to law school, of all things, and I decided that if I didn't take a chance on my lifelong dream of being a writer, I would always regret it. So I decided to move to Europe for 1 year, and I tried to be a food journalist and a romance writer at the same time, kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick. And I had this financial threshold I had to meet in order to not go to law school and be a writer full time by the end of the year in Europe. And that was the year that I published my first 2 books in the Fallen Men series, and my life completely changed. I remember I was in Italy at the time and in a place on the Amalfi Coast with very poor service. And I came back to the apartment I was in, and I had all of these notifications, and Welcome to the Dark Side was in like the top 50 on Amazon. And it was just so mind blowing. I had no comprehension that that book would change my life. And so that's how I kind of started writing, just taking a chance on myself. I didn't even tell anyone at first that I was writing. I just published for myself. And it wasn't until the Fallen Men series, which Lessons in Corruption is the first book in that series. And it was my 4th published book. But the first 3, I didn't tell a soul about. I didn't do any marketing or anything like that. I just did it for myself. And then with the 4th one, I was like, what if I tried to do this, professionally? And that was when things really took off for me.
Okay, we need to just reiterate what you just said here because we have a ton of doctors, lawyers, accountants listening, okay? Professional women who we go through the motions, we do the shoulds. I'm including myself in this. And you just said that you did the opposite. You're like, wait, I am doubling down on my desire. I love that.
It was a hard thing to do. I mean, my mother was a single mother who raised me, very high powered, worked her way to the top of her profession. It was drilled into me from a very young age. You're an independent, strong woman. You provide for yourself. And that was number one. And she always wanted me to be a lawyer. Like when I was 4 and people would ask me what I wanted to be, I didn't say princess or astronaut or ballerina. I said a lawyer or an orthodontist. So
orthodontist was one of mine too at
yes,
4.
right? Just so practical. And so it was hard for me to take that chance on myself. And I think just doing it and not telling anyone about it was kind of a safety net for me, just to allow myself to do it purely for me. And I still had that safety net. I still, I was enrolled in law school to go to law school. Like that was what I was going to do if all else failed. But I do think that, especially maybe for our generation, when we had talks at school about what you could be when you were older, it was like a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, a teacher, something
Professional.
with definable educational route. And the world has changed so much since then. There's so much more room for creativity and entrepreneurship. And especially for women, I feel like there's so much more space for us to have outlets for all of that creativity that before we didn't really have a place to go with it. And so I feel really lucky that I'm living in this time and generation where it's much easier to be an entrepreneur, to be a self-published author, to find outlets that are viable to have a creative career.
I completely agree with the time with social media, the internet, just like the global way that we do business now. It's the game has totally changed. And for people that are creative and hardworking, like when we can really blend those two sides, because I heard a lot of amazing, like I was in Italy at the Amalfi Coast, which is one of my favorite places ever, by the way. So like you're there and I'm just picturing you in like beautiful scenery, writing these stories, novels. And you also said I had an income goal that
Mhm.
I wanted to meet. So I love when we blend sort of the two, like the creativity with some, because I talk a lot about feminine and yin. And it's mainly because I'm talking to women that have been very much raised in a patriarchal driven. We all were saying we wanted to be orthodontists at 4, right? But there's like we need both, right? There's still the action. And that's what I heard you say, which I love.
And it's so true. I always say that if you want to be successful in a creative pursuit, you have to marry the creative with the businesswoman. So I'm an artist first. Like I always say there's a spectrum, and there's the artist and there's the business person, and you have to try and find your way into the middle of that ground, because you can be the best artist in the world, but if you're not a good business person, no one's going to find your art. And you can be the best business person in the world, but if you're not a great artist, then people aren't going to buy your product, even if you know how to sell it. And so it is really important. And I think that women are uniquely structured to actually find this balance really well, because we're great multitaskers. We have our brains are going. I just listened to a podcast, and Dr. Amen, who's a brain doctor, really famous one, he was saying women's frontal lobes are so active. We are always thinking. It's why women tend towards depression more than men, because our emotional centers are so heightened. And so we have all of this feedback and all of this emotionality and intellect in our head. And I think that when we marry them, that's where we find success, not even just in a creative pursuit, but just in our lives. If we can kind of balance those two, we'll find a pretty clear path to whatever success means to us.
I love that. I'm going to message you for that doctor's name after because would love to have them on as a guest. I agree with a lot. And also, I'm like, and we could dig into is that the way we are wired biologically, or is some of that what is expected of us culturally?
It's definitely both. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
way. He said that they did 49,000 brain scans for this study that he was talking about, which is a lot.
Yes.
And it definitely, I mean, in all of the things that I've read and seen, I think that being a woman, the idea of being a woman and how we've been raised, it's multi-generational. It's multi-decades, multi-centuries of this idea of what a woman is supposed to be. And I think now is the hardest time to be a woman, because we're expected to be all things at all times. We have to be
Yes.
successful in business, in friendships, we have to be beautiful, we have to be healthy, we have to be so many things. And I always joke that men just have to be tall and hopefully have most of their hair. Like that's the threshold.
And even if they don't, they can pay to have it put
Yeah,
back in.
exactly. Like it's the bar is just it's very
It's
different.
different. It's so
It's
different.
completely
And that's why we have feminine burnout, what I call feminine burnout.
completely.
Okay. Yeah, love. And that is a massive conversation. We could talk about it all day, but I want to talk about you and focus on you. So I was having a conversation with one of my groups this morning, my pleasure principles groups, and it was around desire. And was saying how, and of course they don't like this, but I was saying how if we don't know what we desire, we don't know how we like our pussies licked, if we don't know how we like our butt grabbed, then we can't be mad at our partners for not reading our minds. And so, anyways, that was along the lines of the conversation. And I love audio erotica, erotic fiction. I love those as tools for means of exploring what we want.
Oh, completely. I think it's so necessary. I think, I mean, this goes for everything, but I think especially for this like sexual self-expression, which women are not really encouraged to feel. Like it's the Madonna or the whore kind of complex that we have imposed upon us. But I think in fiction, it's a really safe space to explore things that you're not ready to indulge in your real life.
100%. And even because, and that's what I'm trying to, we're talking about like doing pleasure research. One of my old teachers, Mama Gina, that's her term, pleasure research. But I was turned on by power dynamics and BDSM in fiction ever before I felt safe or comfortable expressing, doing like it in real life.
Oh, totally. I think it's that first, it's kind of wading into the shallows. You kind of get a feel for, oh, hey, wow, I'm shocked that this turned me on. And it's a judgment-free zone. It's not you doing it. It's not you saying that you want to do it, but your consciousness is free to kind of put yourself in those shoes and see how, try it on for size, see how
And
it
that's
feels.
what I'm witnessing, or I'm encouraging my clients to witness, is just go at it, like enter, like use these tools with the beginner's mind. Just, oh, wow, like I felt a tingle reading that chapter or that scene, or the opposite, like wow, that really brought up some unresolved trauma or issues for me.
Also, I think art is also such a good way to start the healing process as well. Like you're not confronted face to face with your specific demons, but the shadows of those demons can kind of be a safe place to work on it in the periphery.
And somehow like kind of complete or rewrite a story or a narrative. Yeah, I completely agree. And to have just, yeah, to have the permission when it's not us exploring is good. So tell me, what was your inspiration for the Fallen Man series?
Well, honestly, it started from a picture of a model named Christopher Mason. I saw this photo of him leaning against a motorcycle in this sleeveless shirt, looking over his shoulder with this expression like he was waiting for his woman to come join him on the back of his bike. And literally from that one image, the idea for the first book, Lessons in Corruption, the hero, the heroine, and then 10 books in the series all erupted from my mind, like fully formed within half an hour from looking at that one image. And it doesn't, I won't say that that's a normal thing to have happen. That's quite specific, but that's exactly what it was just this one image. And he looked young, and I thought, I had Lessons in Corruption is a what they call a reverse age gap, which I don't really love the term, but it's an older woman, a younger man. And I just had this idea of here's this completely self-possessed, mature, young looking guy, and what if you flipped it on its head with this idea that age means maturity? Age does not mean maturity. It's, the experiences of your lived life mean maturity and how you've kind of processed those. And I wanted to flip it on its head and have it be that she's his teacher, so she should be teaching him. And yet it's him who's younger, who's the student that is teaching her how to live life and how to move past social norms and actually live for who she wants to be.
Which I loved, by the way. And that was the first time that I was turned on by reverse age gap. If now I know that there's a term for it. And also being my age, I get a lot of those memes that's like you're at the age that you could date the dad or the son. But I
Yeah.
was just it actually opened up. I was like, huh, I think I could do this now.
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure. I think that, and I think again, that's even something that there's like shame around women with younger men. And yet, I mean, men with younger women is just a time old tradition. Um,
That's acceptable.
right? So, I mean, I think that it should be acceptable the other way around as well. And there's something empowering about it. And I think she grew up, in a upper middle class background with set societal expectations for her. She was supposed to be a teacher and find a husband from a young age. She was married really young. She didn't have any idea what she wanted to do with her life. And it was only when she met this man and realized that there was another way to live that she even thought to question any of the like societal mores that were pushed onto her from an early age. And I think that that's something also that we're people pleasers. I think women, like, we're kind of raised to be people pleasers. And I think naturally we're people pleasers as well
Yeah,
because we want
naturally, and it is extra reinforced
to totally.
societally
So
and culturally.
the double whammy. And so we really don't have a hope of getting out of that. But the problem with being people pleasers is that so often you suppress what you want without even thinking about it and
Mm.
just keeping on what everyone else wants. And that's this journey for the heroine in Lessons in Corruption is all about that. It's she was raised to believe a certain thing and to believe about herself certain things, and she's 26 years old and she feels like she should know better, and she's actually just starting to realize who she is and what she wants to do with her life. And by the end of the book, she's not a completely different person because she is who she is, but she has a completely different set of expectations for herself and for her life.
And I almost felt like she, and this is the work that I do with my clients, because we're all the people pleasers doing what we should, getting the law degrees, etc., becoming the orthodontist, and then going, oh, this is it? Like, this is unfulfilling. I was sold a lie because, I was told that if I check these boxes, then like that's the recipe for success and fulfillment. And no one is fulfilled. It's like so miserable. But I feel like she was more herself at the
Completely.
end. Like she, given that exploration, like she felt more aligned to her authentic self than being
Completely.
like in an abusive
I think
relationship with that other guy. I can't remember
it,
his name.
yeah, totally. I think that for her, King, the hero, he was the first person to ever hold up a mirror in front of her and say, "Hey, take a look. Find what you find what you want to see. Like, this is your time. Not this, I don't want you to just love me. I want you to love yourself. I want you to see what I see when I look at you, which is just untold exceptionalism and potential." And no one had really done that. People were like, "You are this way, you are doing this thing," from her parents to her peers to her horrible husband, just like, "This is the way that I expect you to live." And he was the first person ever to say, "How do you want to live? What brings you joy?" And I think that that's something that we're not really taught to ask ourselves that question. And how do we find success? How do we take care of ourselves? Whatever. But what does happiness mean to you? And how are you pursuing that? And I think the pursuit of pleasure has this, like, I don't know, negative connotation.
Negative, gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not, my husband and I joke and we say we're proud hedonists because the pursuit of pleasure is kind of the backbone of our lives. And that doesn't mean that we're, having a bacchanalia every night, getting drunk and doing, whatever, but it's about the little thing, doing something little every day to bring yourself pleasure, a little bit bigger every week, every month, having things to look forward to, having things that fill your cup so you're not always feeling like you're running on empty.
You're literally speaking to why I created the Pleasure Collective to begin
Yeah.
with. It was like all of these women that are yin deficient, empty cups, empty, I call it empty pleasure tanks, and they don't even know like they know something's missing, but they don't know where to begin. And everything that they've done or tried, like by overfunctioning, fixing, doing what they should do, it's not the answer. And they come to me when they're finally in, like, to get a perfectionist type A, what I call superwoman, to sort of raise her hand and be like, listen, I have exhausted all resources. I have tried all things and I need help, is hard, but also
So
amazing work.
Yeah, so rewarding. And it's something that we don't talk about enough, I think. And even as women, like being a teenager and a young adult, I remember my group of friends. One time I wanted to talk about masturbation. I was like, "Hey, do you guys masturbate? I don't know. I do." And they were all like, "Oh my God, we can't talk about this." And, "Oh, you're so weird for even talking about it." And, I was young at the time, but I wish that that had not been the conversation we had, because self-pleasure is kind of the foundation of
Foundation.
pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's interesting because I'm still friends with a lot of those women. And years later, I talked to them about it. And I said, it was weird that we never really had conversations around that, or even around, sex in general. Like, why didn't we talk about that? Why didn't we help each other? Why didn't we share our secrets or our miseries or whatever? And it unleashed a conversation that we had years later that was so interesting. And many of the women that I spoke to did not find pleasure at all in sex. still to that day. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I think a lot of that's because you're not willing to talk about it. If you're not willing to talk about it with me, are you willing to talk about it with your partner? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
And unfortunately or not, the truth is that pursuing pleasure means communicating about pleasure, however, whatever form that takes. And we have to find our voice and be able to say, like, this is what we want, this is what I'm curious about, and that's okay.
Yeah, in and out of the bedroom.
Totally.
That's what I'm always about. It's like this is not like I love pleasure. I love the concept of pleasure. I love that still some people think it's taboo, and that has changed so much in the last 10 years since I started doing this stuff. Yeah, I first of all, I think we should have been friends because I was that friend
Ah, and I was
younger.
embarrassed. I remember being embarrassed because they made me feel embarrassed. And I remember at one girl was like, "Hey, you should try to be more like a nun." This was, and I was like, "What?" And I literally remember her saying that to me, and I was like, "I don't want to be like a nun.
Yeah, I
I
just had
want
a
to."
visceral pussy reaction to that. I
It's
just
like,
had my pelvic floor just
yeah,
contract. Yeah, we did the same hand motion, like, oh no, thank
huh.
you.
And I thought, well, no, because I'm happy with the way that I am, and I'm happy. And I don't know whether this says anything, but my first lover, and when I was younger, my first lover is my husband now. And we weren't together for years, and then we got back together. But I think that one of the foundations of our relationship from an early time period was we always communicated about pleasure. Like literally, I remember being younger and saying to him, like, "Hey, would you want to role play?" And this was the first person that I ever was, sexual with. And I think that that is that's what you aim for. That's what you want with your partner. You want that open discourse. You want someone who is going to say, "Hey, is this fantasy something that stays a fantasy, or do you want it to be a reality? Do you want me to make this happen? How does it make you feel when I do this?" Like that conversation shouldn't be taboo. It should be normalized, and it actually should be fun.
And I had a very similar first sexual experience as well. It was exploration, it was fun, like so much, like tried so many things, and it was never from a judgmental place. It was just like you want to try this? You want to try it again? Is this a no for us? Like there's actually a ton of research on those first sexual experiences being formative, especially for women. And I talk about this in my book. And because we are not taught about our desires. We don't have pleasure focused sex education. We have like penetration focused sex education. So very much it's like male pleasure focused, and we don't know what we want, how to ask what we want. We think we're whores. Everything we talked about. A lot of women have very poor first sexual experiences and encounters, and it kind of sets them up to be like shut down around the whole thing.
Well, I think because there's this base level shame around just sex and owning our sexuality, that every negative experience you have is just going to make you feel kind of more ashamed and shut you down even more, to the point where you're so out of touch with where to even begin having that conversation with a new partner, even if they are interested. And I just think it's so sad. There's so many women that I know that don't enjoy sex and they don't feel good about themselves in their bodies. And I think there's a direct correlation between your sex life and how good you feel in your body, because we can do all the work. You can be the healthiest, most beautiful, whatever person in the world. But if you're not getting positive feedback in that way, or having positive discourse in that
Those
way,
are my clients. Yeah. They've got the like,
hard.
couple 100,000 followers. It looks really good on the outside and they like can't orgasm or
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
because you can't, we're so mental, like we're so mentally focused that you can't just, men can get a hard on from like a stiff breeze. Women need more attention. And I think that's why, you know, just in writing and in erotic fiction, I think one of the things that people are really drawn towards is the dirty talking. And there's this sense, oh, I don't want to ask for dirty talking. Oh, the word pussy or the word whatever. No, we are attracted to dirty talking because that's verbalization of how turned on we make our partners. And that is, and them saying, you have a beautiful pussy. Like that's something that will come
Give me praise kink all day,
all day
every day.
long, all day long, because that's all that is, like going right to the pleasure center of our brains as women. Like we're
And
not.
to the superwoman, like the high achieving, people pleasing. Like it's like, oh, I'm pleasing him, I'm arousing him. Yeah. Oh, that mainline me the praise kink.
Completely. And I think that's something that, you know, it can be weird to ask your partner. You feel like, oh, can I say, like, can you tell me? Or it can be weird to even hear it at first, you know, in real life and not in a book. But it's so important and it's crazy. I actually did an experiment with my husband one day and I was like, I would love to see if you can just turn me on from dirty talk. Like, I don't want you to touch me. I just want to see this. And it worked 100%. It worked 100% because it was stimulating the mind and it put me in a safe mental place to feel my own self and feel excited about not just having sex with him, but about who I was and what I was bringing to the table.
And that's an exercise that I have my clients do is like, when's the last time you got off to yourself?
Completely. It's
Because we
such a
don't.
no.
It's a game changer.
It's a huge game changer. And it's interesting, even in my books, I always have sexual enlightenment and sexual empowerment as being a part of my books because I do think that it's something that women struggle with so much. And I love, there's like almost nothing more that I love than when I get a message or a DM or an email from readers and they're like, hey, this really meant something to me. Like, I really struggled with this. And then it was so cool. I woke my husband up in the middle of the night after reading this to have sex with him. And I'm like, you go.
Yes.
Yes, this is awesome. That is what we should be doing. Like, not even feeling the shame that you're reading and you're getting turned on by what you're reading. And so you don't want to tell your husband. And no, like,
It's like,
what
let's
turns
make
you
this
on
reality.
completely. And what turns you on should turn them on because it's going to behoove them to enjoy
Yes.
that as well.
That's I want to tattoo this on my clients. It's like men want to please you. They want to please you. So I love the sexual enlightenment part of your work. And something else that I also really love is the male characters and like the man woman relate the power dynamics in that relationship. Those were like of all of them, really. They all have their own unique little flavor to them, in my opinion. So, and we don't have a ton of great examples of that. Porn doesn't give us that. A lot of our I'll always ask my clients, like, your parents, aunts and uncles, like, did you ever have an example of a relationship? Like, again, pleasure in and out of the bedroom. Did you ever have an example of a relationship that you would like want to model? And it's usually no. So, something else that I use because I'm teaching a lot of the women that I work with, they're in the dominant role. They call the shots, they're the overfunctioner and then they're pissed that their man is like a child, right? When they're doing the overfunctioning and mothering. So I teach them how to be like fully Dom. And they're kind of like, yeah, I don't actually like this. And then teach them how to be sub and receiving and in the feminine. And that's really the space where they want to be. But they have so much hangups to get there that I have to teach them Dom first. And they're like, wait, this like it's like trying on clothes, right? This doesn't fit. So then they'll try sub and then they're like, oh, thank you. So I love that about your characters.
Well, I mean, and that's so interesting because so in book 3 of the Fallen Men series, it's called Good Gone Bad, and there's Lion Danner and Harley Rose as the heroine. Harley Rose is a motorcycle club princess. Her dad's the president. She's a tough as nails.
Kick ass bitch.
Totally. Like, she is so intense and such a baddie. And then Lion, the man, he's a bit more still waters run deep. He's kind of a gentleman cowboy type figure. So it seems like on the outside, their dynamic might be that she's the dom and he's more the sub. No way. It is totally reversed in the bedroom. And that's because, especially for women, I think that are in that high powered role or that are constantly on, they have high intensity, they're always making decisions. We want to just take a break and relax and be able to shut off our minds for a moment so that we can actually access the pleasure, because if we can't shut off our minds, if we're still making all those decisions, then we're
Yeah.
operating up here. In order to orgasm, you need to operate much,
Be
much more
in your body.
in your body, not in your head. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. In Harley Rose's case, she loves being a sub. She will be completely submissive to this man, even though in life she's not submissive to anyone. And I think that's such a special intimacy to share with your partner. And you have to feel safe and you have to build that trust. But once
Yes.
you
And
have
I would like to just a caveat, because I this is with my clients as well, but people listening, like if there are toxic elements to your relationship or abusive elements to your relationship, it is like surrender in those cases is not healthy and not okay. So I love that you brought up safety because we need to feel safe with our partner doing these things.
And your partner should not be degrading you or anything like that. And if you like a degradation kink, that's one thing. But like in your life outside of the bedroom, your partner should be cherishing you, loving you, supporting you,
Filling
praising
you up.
you, completely filling you up so much. And it has no bearing on the dynamic in the bedroom. Like they have to be good to you everywhere in order
Which
for
is
you to build that trust in the bedroom.
Yeah, which I love about these male characters is they are men. They are masculine. There is killing. Like it's that raw masculine, and they love and respect their partners.
Because there's nothing emasculating about loving your partner. And that's something that drives me absolutely mad is this idea of, I don't know if you had this, but when I was growing up, if a boy really liked a girl, he was whipped.
Yeah,
And men
bro.
would make
Ugh.
fun of him, bro, you're so whipped, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No, it is the sign of an amazing, self-possessed man to, without shame, love, support, and praise his woman. Not just to her, but to his friends. Like, yeah, I mean, I love my wife. She's so smart. She's so amazing. No shame around that. Never any posturing to pretend that they don't love you as much as they do. You want to be with a man who is going to always and forever, no matter the circumstances, uplift you and love you.
Yeah,
And I think
gas
that's
you up all the
completely,
time.
and it makes them more masculine and it makes them more attractive to have that level of confidence. They don't have to pretend they're not in love with their woman. That
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
I completely agree. But there is that cultural messaging
Totally. And I
that
think
I
especially
completely
it's bad. Um, that kind of messaging. It's really bad.
Yes. Yeah. And as someone healing from an extremely abusive and toxic relationship, those books like were in part triggering, in part like so therapeutic. And I actually got to pick apart some of the dynamics that I was attracted to about extremes. So, have you heard of Amrupani? He's like a BDSM power dynamic, like Dom teacher. Anyways, he says that like the ecstasy that we seek, that like the pleasure, the fullness, like ecstasy that we seek, it's like a live wire. And if we're trying to hold it without the capacity to contain it, then we're going to like electrocute ourselves, actually. So I was in the pursuit of a lot of that without fully healing and integrating my childhood trauma and the rest. So the books I loved because they helped me heal, and I felt it gives such great examples of sexual liberation and how men and women can relate. Because that dynamic, that like man, that masculine man that is also so in love and proud of his partner, that will also like pursue her and love her and try things, and it just the way they speak to each other. I just feel like the characters are so fully formed, and it gives us a framework for relationships that we need, especially the women that I work with.
Well, I'm very moved by that. Thank you very much. I think that, I mean, these characters are living entities for me, and each of them do have a different dynamic. And part of that is because it's important to me to show that so many different types of women and men can interact in this beautiful way, that so many different types, I have women that are sweet and innocent. I have women who have been through so much trauma. We haven't talked about this series, but I have a duet called the Anti-Heroes in Love Duet. And this heroine, her fiance left her for her sister. She was abused, sexually abused as a teenager. She has had so much trauma, and she also has infertility issues, and her whole dream has been to be a mother her whole life. So she has untold trauma. She's the ice queen. People think that she's kind of villainous. And then she has her story, And she meets this man who's like, you are beautiful. You are perfect the way you are. Being an acquired taste is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It means that only the very best of people deserve to be in your orbit, because only the very best of people can match your energy. Every single type of person, if you're hard, if you're soft, if you're black cat energy, golden retriever energy, anything in between, there's someone out there for you that will meet your energy, match it, and uplift it, and tell you that you're beautiful and that you deserve to be loved. And I think that there's this idea that we have to settle, that our expectations are too high. Our expectations are not too high. It takes patience and it takes working on ourselves to realize and recognize what we deserve and what we want. But I write romance novels that, might be outlandish because they're about criminals or whatever, but the love is not outlandish. I really, truly believe that that love exists for people, and that we just have to be brave and bold enough to find it.
It's aspirational. We have to
Yeah,
stand for it.
totally, 100%. And I see women, I have friends who settle. And I remember talking to a friend and I said, well, is he the love of your life? You don't seem happy. And she said, well, I don't know if I don't think I'm a passionate person. I think I just want companionship. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to judge you for that. We all have different needs, but I will urge you to reconsider that you're not passionate. You might not have been passionate in your life. You might not think you're passionate, but everyone has passion and is capable of passion. And if you want that in your life, you can have that in your life. You just have to pursue it.
I have this, and I'm with you. Anyone, what they want, what fulfills them is, I'm cool, 110% cool with that. But I have a lot of women that will come to me and say, like, I think I'm just asexual. I think I'm going to let my partner, will open our marriage. And if people are asexual, obviously they're not listening to this podcast, number one, but that is great. It doesn't, for me, like, to have that fullness, to have that desire, that passion, to have those experiences, is that not in our, like, biology and DNA and the hormone cascades? Like, it can feel like being high sometimes, And I mean, I'm not talking about trauma bonds, because yeah, but it's so alive. It makes us feel so alive. Okay. Love this. I love you. The conversation, your work, I just literally cannot say enough. And anytime I get to promote a fellow Canadian, I want to do it. So tell the listeners, like, where can they find you? I mean, I'm pretty sure the books are everywhere, but where do you want people to know more?
Well, you can find me on my website, gianadarling.com, or on Instagram. I spend a lot of time over there. But my books are on Amazon in ebook, and you can find them in bookstores or on at Target online or wherever you can order them. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, then they're in Kindle Unlimited as well.
Amazing. Just Super Women, Fallen Man series. Just saying. I know I'm on repeat on a broken record, but I believe that you will enjoy it. So, Giana, thank you so, so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an amazing chat. I've been looking forward to it forever, and it was so good to just catch up with you.
Have a great week, everybody. If you like what you heard in this episode, leave me a rating. Your support helps me get discovered by more women like you. Together, we can change the conversation around women's sexual health and pleasure for you, your partners, and generations to come.